And yes, in all the other Zelda games, there was always a way for Link to get from place to place, be it by running, warping, or just riding a horse. However, in this game, the sailing is just plain boring. In all of the other games, there was always some form of excitement that you could always get behind, whether it be monsters that would attack you, or just certain things that you had to look for. But here, there's nothing. Especially early on in the game, you could literally run to the grocery store and just grab something to eat and just leave the game sailing from one area to the next, and you would be just fine. And later on in the game, they do introduce some sea-based enemies that you have to avoid, but it's so easy to just ignore them. When they come careening at you, all you have to do is jump over them, and they will almost never hit you. Even when they hit you, they don't really do any damage. They just knock Link out of the boat for a second. It's completely pointless. While you do eventually gain the ability to warp around, you can only warp to specific places on the sea chart, and these places are usually so far out of the way that you'll still be spending a lot of time just trying to sail to your destination. They do try to throw a few things in to make it interesting, such as treasure charts and weather conditions, but these do not make this activity of sailing from one place to another any less boring, and it only becomes even more tedious when you realize that you'll be spending about a third of the game just hunting for treasure chests with your stupid grappling hook on the sailboat. But that's about the only bad thing I can say about this game. The rest of it is all Zelda, from the characters, to the dungeons, to the interesting puzzles, and the over-the-top boss fights. It is all Zelda. Now before we cover the topic of the graphics, let me just go on record by saying that I like the graphics to this game. I will give my reasons afterwards, but just let me state that anybody who doesn't play this game because of its art design is completely missing the point. A Zelda game is not based on graphics, it's based on great gameplay, interesting puzzles, and over-the-top fights. That being said, allow me to illustrate why these graphics are not as big a deal as everybody seems to make them out to be. First off, the game is much more lighter and joking in tone than games that came out before it, such as Majora's Mask and Ocarina of Time, and the graphics do reflect this. It's more akin to the early games like the original or Zelda 2 in that regard, as it's more of a race for the Triforce than a battle of good versus evil. Compared to Majora's Mask and the much darker themes in that game, it is kind of a bit of a step back, especially since we've gone from potential apocalypse to happy-go-lucky land of mirth and magic. But that's no reason to write this game off. It's still solid, like I said, in the gameplay department, and the graphics do reflect the overall more kid-friendly tone of the game. The game also has the advantage of having its characters be much more expressive than any prior Zelda game. So, while the cartoonish graphics may turn some away, the characters are actually able to convey a lot more drama than characters that have come before them, just because they are able to register so many more expressions. Now that I have defended the graphics, let's move on to the soundtrack, something I don't have to defend in the slightest, because it is friggin' awesome. This may be one of the best Zelda soundtracks ever. Not only does every tune fit with the appropriate situation that you're in, but it also has a very folky feel to it, and every one of the songs is just so peppy and upbeat you can't help but smile when you hear it. And your enjoyment of the music starts right from the opening screen. The musical diversity is made even better by the fact that every major island in the game has its own tune. Check out this music from Outset Island. Or how about this catchy beat from Dragon Roost Island? Of course, this doesn't mean that all of the tunes in the game are very peppy. Some of them are actually very dramatic or foreboding. They're just reserved for dungeons and boss fights in this game. Like this piece from the Forsaken Fortress, or from the second half of the battle against Goma. unlike the music, the themes of this game are lacking. Thematically, it's probably the worst game that I've reviewed so far. While it does have some themes, a majority of them are downplayed, but there is one major theme that I can pick out amongst all of them, and that is finality. This game was made clearly to be the end of the Zelda timeline. While it wasn't designed to be the very last Zelda game, it was definitely the one to bring an end to the Hyrule arc of Link's adventures. In my opinion, the game did this very well by referring to Hyrule as an old land, now submerged below the sea. The game brought a definitive end to Hyrule, Ganon, and even the Triforce itself. And while this game does have sequels, it's made pretty clear that this game is the end of an era. Whereas the other ones are more about Link and his friends exploring new lands, this one was about bringing an end to an age-old war between good and evil. With Ganon no longer around, there is no all-encompassing evil force in the Zelda universe anymore, so Hyrule itself has pretty much ceased to exist. The game even admits that it's the last in the timeline, making a direct link between itself and Ocarina of Time, which is considered by many to be the first in the Zelda timeline, at least at this point in time. However, luckily for all of us, this was not the last Zelda game to come about, and we're going to cover that next time when we take a look at the latest console release for Zelda, The Legend of Zelda: Twilight Princess. Oh, so now you applaud for me.
Attack, we say what the heck, we laugh at the perils we're facing. Every storm we ride has its own reward. And people die by falling overboard. People die by falling overboard. Hey ho, we'll go anywhere the wind is blowing. Hoist up sails and sing, sailing for adventure on the big blue wet thing.